PFF went team by team and put together a list of the most overlooked, underappreciated player on every single NFL roster. And for the Commanders, they listed right tackle Andrew Wylie. Wylie, who's a bit of a punching bag in the fan base after a really slow start to last year. Now, I was very much vocal about how he played in Kansas City when he gave up 9 sacks in his final year. Didn't like the idea of paying him, starting him last year. I thought he got off to a really, really slow start. He did play much better as the year went along. That's irrefutable. But I still was hoping coming into the offseason, Danny, that they were going to do better at right tackle. And it just didn't seem like it was a big priority. In fact, they've gotten worse at left tackle potentially, depending on whether or not the rookie that you drafted, Brandon Coleman, ends up taking the reins and plays that position. Otherwise, you just lost Charles Leno. You're elevating Cornelius Lucas. He didn't really do much else as we wait to see what their actual plan is the rest of the way.
Yeah, it is certainly not a strength, right? I mean, at best, we're going to say Wiley's okay. I think I've got a lower assessment than that. I think he's a little bit below average and maybe even worse than that at times. But there are probably worse players in the league, but that's not what you want, especially in any situation, let alone the offensive line with a rookie quarterback.
This is what they wrote on why they named Wylie the most undervalued player on the team. Wylie came over from Kansas City with OC Eric Bieniemy to play right tackle for the Commanders. Although he gave up a sack in each of his first 4 games with Washington.
Yes, he did.
Wylie got better as the season went on, eventually earned a 69.2 PFF overall grade, a career-high mark for him on his way to ranking 16th among right tackles. So basically, he got to a point where the best he's been in his career, as they see it, is right smack dab in the middle of the 32 starting right tackles in the league. And that is the ceiling to me. The ceiling to me is he can be an average player at the position. I think he played at an average level late last season. And forgive me, but I would like to do better than that at a really critical position, in my opinion.
100%.
I think the tackles, specifically in general, are always more important than, like, I would say 2/3 of the positions if I was going to rank them. But when you have a rookie quarterback, bump them up a level.
Yeah, it's already your premium position. You add an inexperience at the QB spot, and it goes up that much more.
Add in inexperience at the QB spot with your rookie QB, who happens to have a propensity, at least in college, for taking sacks. And a lot of times that doesn't go away. All of a sudden, having really strong tackles and an offensive line on the interior is a big, 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 big deal. So it's why I get if they're saying player on every single team that gets too much crap, and their answer is Andrew Wylie. I can understand that, because I think in the second half of last year, nobody really mentioned it as he played a lot better because they'd already made up his mind, this guy's not good. But if you're telling me this is a possible 2, 3, 4-year starter here, and now they can look elsewhere, I'm going to disagree with that.
Yeah, that's a no from me. I like the distinction that you draw there, right? If it's he's not as bad as you guys think. Okay. Now, whether I agree or not, that's a reasonable opinion, right? Because I think you said it very well. We banged the gavel after a couple of starts when he was a swinging gate and was terrible, and he's getting his QB killed, and we never really update our files when we have a first impression of somebody. That happens a lot in sports and in real life too. I think that's a reasonable thing. So if he's this guy catches too much guff from the local fan base, that's fine. But underrated player or overlooked player, I would have picked somebody else, I guess is what I would say.
I'm looking right now at the Commanders' depth chart, and I'm trying to find my answer to this same question. PFF went every single team, all 32 clubs, and found the most undervalued player, putting together a little list in my head. Who would you say is that guy for the Commanders?
So he hasn't played yet for this team, but the idea of Tyler Biadasz to me is, I think this is the most underrated signing of the whole offseason. They struggled at that spot the last couple of seasons, whether it was via injury, the guy that, should have been there, my old cousin, Chase Roulier, and they've gone through center after center after center, and they were bad at that spot last year, in my opinion. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but I am saying that's a stabilizing force. And again, especially with a young quarterback, the veteran ability to call line signals, even though Jaden Daniels has kind of shown an early propensity to be able to do that through some OTAs, reading some of those reports, but still having a guy to sort of as the steadying hand in the center of that line with a couple of bookends that aren't particularly good, in my opinion, along with some, one new guard on the left and returning Sam Cosmi on the right to be able to kind of solidify that group. I think that was an underrated signing this offseason.
So I was looking for a guy who was already on the team, so I went a different direction. If we can go with new players, I'll give you another answer. But the guy that was already on the roster that I think is not being talked about at all this offseason, who has a chance to help them a lot this year, is Darrick Forrest. I think people forget because of the injury last season how impactful he was when he broke out now 2 seasons ago, which was his second year in the NFL. Forrest, who was drafted out of Cincinnati, didn't really play much at all in his first season. I had to earn a roster spot as a fifth round pick outside of the top 160 in the draft. But in year two, ended up starting 11 games. He picked off 4 passes. He accounted for 6 different turnovers. Like, he was a playmaker in a way that, frankly, not to throw shade, Cam Curl never really was. I mean, he was around the football. He generated takeaways, the types of things that you want at the safety position. He played the first 5 games last year, was one of the leading tacklers on the team with about 30 stops, and then he got hurt, and we didn't see him again. And because he missed the last 11 games, and they've been making moves in the secondary, and his name hasn't popped up very much, I think he's a little bit forgotten right now. So is he underappreciated? Maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, but if you remember when we used to play Don't Forget About, let's not forget that Darrick Forrest actually might be okay. And if he starts next to Jeremy Chin, and they're right on Chin as a fit in their defense, that's a pretty solid safety tandem without paying Curl, who walked. I know people are still a little disappointed by that, but I think that could end up being a really smart decision if Forrest bounces back the way they think he can.
No, I think that's a good one.
Also, Quan Martin, by the way, really quickly, was used way more at safety than in the nickel at OTAs last week, I was reading. I mean, he really didn't line up at all at corner or in the nickel. They used him almost exclusively in the safety room. So you throw him in with Forrest, with Chin, it's very much new look room in a lot of ways.
No, I think that's a good one. Because again, they made moves like they were comfortable. So a couple times where you look at their roster construction, you go, they're more comfortable than I would be. We've already talked about it, but at both tackle spots, I wouldn't be that comfortable. I would have done something very differently than these guys did because I'm not comfortable with what's there. Their analysis says we're okay, we'll figure it out later, or we're good enough right now. But they made a move at safety. Like, I thought wrongly that they should pay Cam Curl, because I'm going, well, you're not going to find anything in that, that's the same. That's a consistent playmaker, especially when he's in the box. You can find a lot of good uses for him. Dan Quinn, Joe Witt's defense, etc. Not only did they probably upgrade with a guy that's made more plays in Jeremy Chin, but you mentioned now with Darrick Forrest, combine that with Percy Butler, also Quan Martin's experience. You're now, I wouldn't say you're loaded at safety. That's probably a bit too far, but you're pretty comfortable at safety. I like the numbers there. I like some of the bodies there better than I do at tackle.
I still think they lack a star. They don't have a great player, probably, but you've thrown quantity at a problem
without spending a lot either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would rather build positions that way generally. If you find me guys that fit, and you give me a bunch of solid players in a room, and they fit my defense, offense, whatever, my scheme, I'll do that over a star and some scrubs behind him, where if that guy goes down, I'm in trouble. I don't mind how they did it at all. Now, you went with a new player that you think's being overlooked a little bit.
I did.
I'll do that. Austin Ekeler. This could end up going really sideways for your boy. I think Austin Ekeler could have a monster year as a pass catcher. I hope that the plan with Jaden Daniels is get the football out as fast as possible. Horizontal raid. The air raid needs to be the sideways raid.
The raid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to get the ball out of this young man's hands and into space. I think Austin Ekeler as a pass catcher, and maybe he's got more as a runner too. I mean, last year was pretty ugly, but he was injured and hampered most of the season, so we just assume he's cooked a little bit between the tackles. But I think Austin Ekeler, why not have him go catch 65, 70 balls and make his quarterback look good? I think there's a chance that they brought him in for a reason, and maybe that's the plan. I'm very high still on him as a pass catcher. If you look at the analytics on after the catch, how often he made people miss, he was still top 5 in the league in that category. I think he's got some wiggle left, and he can help them.
Well, the thing that gives me some optimism in terms of him running the ball, just I'll add to that, is it wasn't like anybody ran the ball well for the Chargers last year. Josh Kelly was everybody's free agent pickup darling in fantasy, and he ran for 3.8 yards a pop. So I think their running game was pretty broken with that last regime. I expect that to change this year, by the way, with some guy named Harbaugh running things. But in terms of Ekeler, I've asked for years for an Austin Ekeler type back. I want an army of those guys.
Well,
there's no better
McKissick. They haven't had one.
Yeah, there's no better Austin Ekeler type back than a guy named Austin Ekeler. So heck yes to that. 70 reception should be, I don't say the minimum, but should be the expectation, right? Get him the ball on early downs. Don't just wait till third down when everybody's backed off and you're checking it down to him. Early down footballs to Austin Ekeler in space, please. And thank you. That's a good one. Here's my returning player. I think this might be a bit of a stretch. This might be a little bit of an Armstrong here, but bear with me. My guy was F.A. Obata. We're talking about overlooked. He's down on the depth chart behind situational pass rushers like Dante Fowler, KJ Henry, Andre Jones even, and nobody's really paying attention to F.A. Obata. His last time as a healthy player 2 seasons ago as a part-time Peter came up with 4 sacks, playing a little bit of defensive tackle, a little bit of end, sometimes, handed the dirt on the interior, sometimes, rushing from the edge. A useful, helpful player that is overshadowed, I think, by all the new acquisitions. Again, whether it's Farrell, Fowler, or others, that's a guy that people kind of forgotten about, to me, that is productive when given the chance.
Got a text from our buddy Ben Standig from The Athletic, who said underrated. How about Sam Cosmi? I don't know if he's underrated. I'd like to think the fan base knows he's become an excellent player. Now,
so I thought about him, but that's why.
Yeah, if in fact when Cosmi's name comes up, people still think of him as like a guy, then he's definitely underrated.
If you think of him as a failed tackle, then maybe we could talk about it. But I think of him as a really good guard.
He's become one of the better guards in the league, it seems like. And he was graded as such on a lot of the sites that do that kind of thing. He also mentioned John Bates is underrated. Bates is just not for me. If you are a blocker only tight end who has the elusiveness in the open field as a 2x4, it can't help me a whole lot. I'm just not into that. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, and I'm glad he's on the team because he can block. But like underrated as a third tight end who should never catch the ball or be targeted ever. Okay, he's a decent blocker. He's an extra tackle essentially.
I love me some Ben Stanek, but I think John Bates is very appropriately rated. That would be my response to Ben.
I will be fascinated to see with this coaching staff, though, what they get out of Forrest, what they get out of just some of the guys that in the secondary, especially, like everyone played badly. You had a high school coach coaching you. Let's see what it looks like this coming year.